everyone, welcome to this topic of conditional statements in Python. Let's start with the definition. So what is conditional statement? In Python, conditional statements gives us ability to control the statements as per the condition. This control is provided by Boolean expression. Boolean expressions are nothing but true or false. When a Boolean expression in a condition statement returns true, it executes the inside block of the intended statements. If it returns false, it executes next part of the statement, ignoring the conditional statement blocks. What is the use of conditional statement? It provides control over the statements so that it helps to improve the efficiency of our coding. Python language supports different types of conditional statements, which are as follows: if statement, if-else statement, nested if statement, chain conditional statements. Now, let's begin with if statement. In this, we are going to learn about what is if statement, its syntax, points to be remembered, flowchart for better understanding, working on if statement using example. If statement is the most used statement in conditional statement. This is the syntax. If expression consists of the required condition colon, block of the intended statements. All statements that are indented indicates they belong to this particular if statement. Outside the indentation executes rest of the code. Expression consists of Boolean expressions. If statement evaluates the Boolean expression. If the expression returns true, then it evaluates block of indented statements present inside the if statement. If it returns false, then it ignores and executes next statements in the code. For a condition, checking it's true or false. If it is true, it goes to the statements and to the rest of the code. If it is false, it goes directly to the rest of the code. Points to be remembered. Colon is must after if statements, otherwise it throws syntax error. Indentation must be followed after if statement, usually 4 spaces or 1 tab space, otherwise it throws an indentation error. Parenthesis is not necessary. It will not generate any error whether parenthesis is used or not. Let's try to work on few examples. Here we initialized A with 10 and B with 5. And the condition A is greater than B. Print true. Let us execute this code. It prints true as it satisfies the condition. Let's try with A is less than B. It will not print anything because it doesn't satisfy the condition. If we remove colon and try, it throws syntax error. If we remove indentation and execute, it shows indentation error. Let's take another example. Let's try to print pineapple in list and execute this code. It shows this it prints this rest of the code because in this list we don't find pineapple, so it goes to the rest of the code.
Moving on to the next topic, let's talk about else statement. In this topic, we will be discussing about what is else conditional statement, syntax of else statement, followed by flowchart, and then some points that must be remembered, and then an example to understand else statement. Now, what is else condition statement? Else condition statement comes into play when the expression in if statement returns false. This kind of approach is also known as alternative execution. Let's take a look at the syntax. If expression colon block of indented statements, else colon block of indented statements. What happens here is if statement evaluates Boolean expression. If expression returns true, then it executes the block of indented statements present inside the if statement. If expression returns false, then it executes block of indented statements present inside the else statement. Let's try to understand this in a better way using a flowchart. As you can see, if statement checks whether true or false. If the condition is true, then it executes the body of if if statement and proceeds to the rest of the code. If the condition returns false, then it executes body of else statement and returns to the rest of the code. Now let's talk about some points that must be remembered when writing an else statement. It will generate a syntax error if you avoid colon after if and else statements. And it will generate an indentation error if you avoid indentation in the body of it and else statements. Let's try out an example to know how this else statement works. In this example, we'll be checking whether the given input is even or odd. Okay, let's run the code. I'm giving input as 9. The output is an odd number. What happened here is the given input first checked the if condition. It is not satisfied, so it executed the else statement. Let's move on to the next topic, that is nested if. In nested if, we will be learning about what is nested if conditional statement, followed by syntax of nested if statement and flowchart and some points that must be remembered and concluding it with an example. What is nested if conditional statement? Can we write an if statement inside another if statement? Why not? We can. And such statements are known as nested if statements. Let's take a look at the syntax. If expression, block of indented statements, if expression, colon, block of indented statements. What happens here is if statement evaluates Boolean expression. If expression returns true, then it executes block of indented statements present inside the if statement and executes the nested if statements. If expression returns false, then it proceeds to the rest of the code. Let's try to understand this in a better way using a flowchart. As you can see, if statement checks whether true or false. If condition returns true, this executes body of if block and body of the nested if and proceeds to the rest of the code. If the condition returns false, this proceeds to the rest of the code directly. Now let's discuss some points that must be remembered in order to avoid errors. First, it will generate a syntax error if you avoid colon after if and else statements. Second, it will generate indentation error if you avoid indentation in the body of if and else statements. Let's try out an example to know how this nested if statement works. In this example, we'll be checking whether the given input is positive and divisible by 3. Okay, now let's run the code. I'm giving 9 as input. As you can see, the output is a positive number and is divisible by 3. And rest of the code. Let's analyze what happened here. I have given 9 as my input. The input first checked the condition of the if statement. If it is satisfied, so it executed the nested if statements. And even that returned true. So it printed this number as positive and divisible by 3. And then it proceeded to the next part of the code. For better understanding, I added this print statement as rest of the code.
Let's discuss the topic chain conditional statements. In chain conditional statements, we are going to learn about what is chain conditional statement, syntax of chain conditional statement, flowchart, points to be remembered, and an example. So what is chain conditional statement? When we are supposed to give 2 or more than 2 conditions, then chain conditional statements comes into play. Let's look into the syntax of chain conditional statement. If expression colon block of indented statements, else expression colon block of indented statements, else colon block of indented statements. Elif is nothing but else if. So initially if statement evaluates Boolean expression and if that expression returns true, then it executes block of indented statement present inside the if statement. If that if statement returns false, then it evaluates elif statement, and if the elif statement returns true, it executes block of indented statements present inside the elif statement. If that elif statement also returns false, then it evaluates block of indented statements present inside the else. Let's look into the flowchart for better understanding. If the condition of if statement is true, then it executes the body of if statement and proceeds to the rest of the code. If it is false, it executes the elif statement, checks whether true or false. If true, it executes the body of elif and then proceeds to rest of the code. If false, it executes the body of else statements and then proceeds to the rest of the code. So, points to be remembered. Colon is must after if, elif, else statements. Ignoring the colon will generate syntax error. Indentation should be followed, otherwise it will generate indentation error. Let's take an example. This code is about to print given input is positive number or 0 or negative number. I am giving input as -1. -1 is negative number. Here, if condition is not satisfied, so it went to elif. Elif is also not satisfied, so it executed the statements in else statement and printed as negative number. Let us take an example from our routine life. Question is, XYZ University provide concession in fee based on their marks obtained in entrance test. They are as follows. No concession for students who scored below 60 marks. Let's code this. So here is the code for the question. If a greater than 100, please enter valid marks. Because maximum marks are 100, so marks not greater than 100. So next, equals to 100, 100%, in range 95 to 100, 75%, so on. So the else statement consists of student who are not eligible for concession. Let's run this. So I am trying input 81. Congratulations, you got 25% concession.
Now I would like to summarize all the main points we have discussed until now. Firstly, conditional statements in Python is evaluated using Boolean expressions, that is true or false. Secondly, conditional statements helps us to execute statements selectively based on the condition we have provided. Next, various types of conditional statements are if, else, nested if, and chained conditional statements with their syntaxes, flowchart, and some examples. In if conditional statement, if a condition is true, then if statement executes. In else conditional statements, else statement is executed whenever the if statement condition is false. Next, if nested if statement is a statement placed inside another if statement. And chained conditional statement is if, elif, else. Now let's talk about indentation. Indentation is white spaces, usually 4 blocks or 1 tab, that indicates the statements given below are belong to the same block. Some common errors we encounter while dealing with conditional statements are, firstly, syntax error. We can avoid syntax error by putting colon after if, elif, else statement. And secondly, indentation error. We can avoid indentation error in if, elif, else statement by giving indentations properly. That's all about conditional statements. Thanks for watching.